The West Tigers podcast is brought to you by the West Tigers Podcast Forum. Have your say on anything to do with the West Tigers, westtigers.com.au. It's the West Tigers podcast, episode number 361. Tumbleweeds would be a good one word to describe the last couple of weeks in regards to West Tigers news. There's been very, very little, so we've made our own. We've made our own news, and that is we put together our West Tigers 2024-25 fan survey and got 219 responses, which I'm really happy about. Obviously, it would have been nice to get more, but 219 I think is a really good representation of West Tigers fans. So to everybody who took the time to put their answers in, we really appreciate it. And we thought on this edition of the pod, we'd start running through the 29 different questions that are on the survey and sort of analysing the results a little bit more. This may end up being 2 podcasts. We'll just see how we go. There's an awful lot to get through with 29 different questions about a whole lot of different West Tigers and NRL-related questions. Looking through the data, I'm quite surprised at some of the results, to be honest. But one thing I wanted to mention before we officially kicked off is there was also a part on the survey where I asked the question, what does the West Tigers mean to you? And it's something that I'm going to share it with the other guys on the other guys here on the podcast offline, because it really is very heartening and it does give you a really good perspective on what the club means to people, especially in terms of how being a West Tigers fan has been handed down from family and through parents, and the stories around why the club means so much to people. It's so much more than just wins and losses and players coming and going. So that was a very, very good read, and it certainly makes you realise the family connections involved. Looks like Eddie's self-excluded himself after a slip in the last pod, which we're still discussing. Nick, I'll be referring to you as Nick, not Stink, okay? So just so you're aware, listen out for Nick, not Stink.
Thanks, Joel. Thanks for clarifying that. I wasn't sure what I was going to be called, but glad to know my actual name is being used, so appreciate that, mate.
All right, let's have a look at these fan survey responses. I think the word that I'm going to use a fair bit tonight is uncertainties and opportunities. When I look at some of these results, they are the 2 things that come to me. There are some issues around the club and around the game which are filled with uncertainties, but there's also a lot of opportunities. Gary, hello to you. I'm going to throw the first one at you. It's something that we discussed a few weeks ago on the pod. West Tigers deserved the 2024 wooden spoon. The results were pretty unequivocal. Yes, 68% of respondents saying that we did deserve the 2024 wooden spoon. Surprised by that?
No, not really. I think the last game of the season for me, the fact that we lost to the side coming second last by 60, I really can't see any other option but to come up with that answer. If we had gone out there and put on a good show, you could have made some arguments around a number of things. I know some people have made arguments around refereeing and all different stuff throughout the season. But when you have that opportunity we had to play the team coming second last in the last round, and they put 60 through you, then I think that kind of shows where you were in the season.
So 68% of the respondents said yes, we deserve the wooden spoon. 22% said no, and 8% were unsure. Nick, this was one that I guess it leaves me asking the question, why not? Why isn't this figure higher? Were you a West Tigers member in 2024? The yes came in at 57%. The no, obviously 42%. There was one person who wasn't sure. Maybe they clicked the wrong button, but it's not going to change the data too much. I think if you're somebody who listens to the West Tigers podcast, is this connected to the club, that you're interested in what we do and how we do it, and you're obviously a keen follower, why aren't you a member? Why hasn't the club been able to convert more of that 42%, especially when you don't need to live in Sydney to be a member? There's no excuse.
There's not, but if I cast my mind back 12 months, So at the end of last season, I remember saying, I'm done with my membership. I just need a break. And then we had that little bit of luck where, thanks to the petition that you guys helped to kick off, we got some action at the club, and, the board was turfed out, CEO was kicked out, Lee left, was pushed out, which was great. And then we had a new sense of hope, I suppose. So I think a lot of people jumped back on board when those changes in the administration happened, including myself. When we had those changes made at the top, I know I said, to myself, I said, that's it, I'm back, new direction. Finally, we're getting rid of the deadwood that's been dragging us through the mud for the last however many years. This is our chance to turn over a new page. But I guess maybe there's some people that maybe wanted to see it happen or see the results happen before they recommit. So that's the only theory I can think of. I'm sure if we start climbing the ladder next season, I'm sure that those numbers will grow.
Yeah, I know a few people who have been members in the past and who currently aren't members or weren't last season. And any that I speak to in that position, it's that they want to see the results on the field. That it's been 12 years of us not making semi-final football, and they're not going to believe anything until those results start to show up on the field. So, and I guess it's probably also not that surprising when you have a look what our membership numbers actually are. Like, it's reported at various times that there's 400,000 West Tigers fans throughout the country. Like, that's probably an exaggeration. But there's only 7,000 members. Or there was only 7,000 members when Richo came out and said that we'd been inflating them for years. And it's now pushing 10,000. So it's probably not that surprising when you have a look at those numbers, that there are still lots of people who the club either has lost as members or has never been able to convince to become members in the first place.
It's 42%. That's a big opportunity there. That's something that the club, I think, needs to find new ways of targeting and getting those people involved, because it's interesting that it goes thoroughly against the question around, and we're not going to preempt it, but the question around, do you have faith or are you happy with the job that Shane Richardson's doing? And it was unequivocally yes. So if you're keeping your protest vote up your sleeve, maybe it's time to start thinking about, well, I've got to give the club a bit of a vote of confidence rather than keeping it as a potential protest. Steve, the next one, which also has, I think, big opportunity. Are you planning on being a West Tigers member in 2025? 63% said yes, so slightly more than those who were members in 2024. 15% saying no, and 21% at this stage unsure whether they're going to sign up for a membership in 25. So that, to me, smacks of opportunity.
It is opportunity, Joel, but I do think it comes down to winning football games. I think the problem with our fan base, and I think it's quite understandable, is it's been 13 years of disappointment, and the goodwill that people have for the club evaporates very quickly, I think. And, that comes down to individual personality, I suppose, but I don't think any fair-minded person could blame people for just being sick and tired of the continual failure that has been West Tigers for a long period of time. So, you'll start the season off with an air of optimism and hope and rejuvenation, and 4 or 5 losses later, that goodwill's gone, or your membership pack doesn't turn up on time and the goodwill's gone, or someone says something wrong, or a player does the wrong thing, and that goodwill evaporates quickly. So the club need to be able to turn that around, and the way to turn that around is through winning football games and people getting excited and joyous around being part of West Tigers, and then those numbers will increase. But it's going to be a slow churn. 7 to 10,000 in a year is not bad.
It's not bad. Yeah,
it's not bad considering we came last. But I think 10 to 15 to 20 could take a while.
Yeah, I think we're halfway from being respectable. I think 20,000 for a club this size, and a merger between two foundation clubs, And a club that's been in its own existence for 25 years has to get 20,000 members. I don't think that's impossible.
Yeah, I don't think, like Gary, you just said a few minutes ago you think the 400,000 might be a stretch. I actually don't think it is, right? Like you look at Canterbury, and we are, I think we can be compared to a Canterbury Bankstown type club. They start winning and people just come out of the woodwork. They come from everywhere to support. We sold out. Well, we came dead last. And we didn't look like finishing anywhere but dead last. And we sold out Leichhardt and Campbelltown how many times this year? Like between the two grounds, 5 times? Would that be right?
It would have to be close to 5, yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know that, I don't think we'd ever get anywhere near that number of memberships. Of course not, right? But those who align themselves with West Tigers, I think there are thousands and thousands and thousands of them out there that you could tap into.
I think you've just got to have a look at 2005, 2010, and 2011. The crowds that came out for those semi-final runs, that shows you the potential of this club. And it's been so long since that has happened. And I would dare say there's not only a large amount of people who have stopped being members, but there's probably a large group of people who have disengaged from the club and don't watch the games on television as much as they used to, or don't follow it as closely as they used to. But once some success comes, those people are just going to flood back in. Once things start to turn around, I think those numbers could increase quite quickly if we get some success. But the success on the field is the important part. There's a lot of people who aren't just going to buy people saying we're on the improve. They need to see it with their own eyes.
I agree, Gary. I just wanted to add that 7,000 members to 10,000 is a 30% increase.
Matt Betsy on the official podcast, he was saying that they were talking about home grounds, and he said that if the West Tigers become a winning side, even Combank won't be big enough. That was sort of what his feeling was. So it's true. I mean, people are going to come back. There's some statistics around ambush fan events. I think there's a big opportunity there for us to drive that on the pod more and to talk about getting people along to attend ambush events in 2025. But I think that it's really hard to do without getting into a discussion about the ambush. But my personal perspective is it's really hard to do that kind of thing when you're winning wooden spoons. It's just hard to get people engaged. And when the wins start coming, then you'll be turning people away at the door. How often do you listen to the West Tigers podcast? 69% said always. We like those people, Gary, don't we? They're very, very astute people.
Especially the ones that listen even when Nick's on. I think they're showing real dedication.
69% said they always listen. 20% said sometimes. 6% rarely. And only 4% said never. What's wrong with you people? Come on, you got to join in.
They're not listening, Joel. They can't hear you.
Oh, that's true. Nick.
I think that 4% might include Eddie. Because Eddie did make a comment in our group chat. He doesn't listen to any of the pods. So, Eddie, get out of that bucket, mate.
Yeah, that's Eddie. Eddie was one of those 10 in the out of the 219.
Eddie probably voted 5 times, though.
Yeah. Another area of opportunity. Are you a member of the West Tigers podcast forum? 55% said no. Only 45% said yes. Nick, we need more people to get into that West Tigers podcast forum and have their say through that channel, because I think it's something that's really taking on its own feel. It's something that's a little bit different, and I would like to see more of our listeners come across and join us on the forum.
Yeah, completely agree, Joel. And to be honest, I wasn't a member of the forum until this year. So, my life's pretty full, as most of our lives are. In between working and family life, a lot of my social media stuff kind of keeps me busy, but fills in that spare time. But the forum is really good, so I'm glad that I did join. There's a lot of really good opinions on that, and a lot of the people that put forth their opinions are the people that listen to this pod. So, yeah, the more engagement, the better.
I think the great thing about the forum, and this is just a shameless plug, really, for it, it's such a respectful environment. I'm not huge on social media. It's not something I've ever been big on. And the last thing that I want to do personally in my free time is be involved in some abusive discussion or conversation or whatever, about something that really isn't overly important in the context of my life, right? And so many of these social platforms just become so negative so quickly, and actually, I believe, cross the line with negativity. Whereas our forum is not like that. We have spirited debate and we have differences of opinion, and that's a good thing. But it's always, and I think I say that, I can't think of any situation where it's been really disrespectful or become personal, and not all of the social platforms can say that. So, I'd like to say to everyone listening, if you haven't got involved with the forum, do so, because it's a respectful place to visit, and there's good West Tigers discussion.
And it's probably the most efficient way to tell Gary that he's wrong about things, because most people don't have the opportunity like we do. But you can get on there and tell him that he's got the wrong take on this again.
There's plenty of people who get on there and do exactly that. Shout out to Mike once again. I don't think he and I have ever agreed on anything in our lives, but he's a good guy. So, get on there and tell me I'm wrong. I can cop that.
Keep it up, Mike. Love your work, brother.
Yeah, exactly. The West Tigers are heading in the right direction, Steve. Very heartening for the club here. 85% either agreed or strongly agreed that the club is heading in the right direction. And I think if we did that poll 12 months ago or thereabouts, it would be a vastly different result.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this the other day, actually, because I was listening back to our last pod, and we did come across a little bit negative, I thought. But overall, I really do think, and I think we all do, and that those stats show that, back that up, that the club is moving in the right direction. And to your first question about did we deserve the spoon? Yeah, we did deserve the spoon. But my goodness, there were so many games this year that if it wasn't for a brief moment, it could have been a very different season, and we could have been looking behind us at 4 or 5 teams that finished below us. Now, that didn't happen, and that didn't happen for a reason, and those reasons have to be addressed. But I think off the field and on the field, we are heading in the right direction. I'm one of our greatest critics as a club, and that's because I love the club so much. I'm so passionate about it, right? But there's a lot more we need to get right. But I think we are ticking more boxes than we ever have.
Look, I think this year, off the field, the club, hopefully, and from the outside looking in, appears to have cleaned up a lot of the issues that were going on at the club. We're looking at a new sponsor for next season, stuff like that. We're hopefully moving some players on to help with the on-field stuff. So hopefully those things are starting to fall in place. I was never of the opinion that the changes that were made last off-season were going to have an immediate effect on the club. There just wasn't enough time between what happened last December and the season kicking off in March. There wasn't enough time for any of those sort of changes that we made off the field to have an impact on what we're going to see on the field for this year. What we need to see is we need a lot more changes this off-season, because that's going to allow the changes from last off-season to build going into next season. And hopefully we can start to see the real improvement coming from the changes that we've made as a club start to show on the football field next year. That's what I'm most excited about next season, is to see the changes that we've made over the past 12 months start to positively affect how we play football.
And not just the changes that we've made so far for this coming season, but
Correct.
Also in another 12 months, we're going to have another look at that. We're getting closer. I think you've also got to take into consideration the players that were on the market or that were available for us to look at for 2025. And there's probably going to be another 4, 5, 6 positions that we may even rotate going into 2026. So, yeah, it's an evolution. I think we are heading in the right direction. There's a lot of positive signs.
But Gary, it's a little bit of a different environment next year because the expectation, I think, is a little bit higher. Like everybody was happy to give them this year where we were all tempered we kept our expectations or our disappointment or our frustrations. We gave them that year. Next year, it's a little bit different. It's starting to fall more on the people that have made some of these decisions.
Yeah, 100%. I think there needs to be real positive growth next year. I know Steve at some point over the off-season, probably in this pod, is going to say that we need to make the top 8 next year. But there's no doubt that there has to be positive movement forward on the field next season. Now, if you have a look at our squad right now, it's hard to look at our forward pack going into the next season and be happy at the moment. So I still think there's a number of changes we need to make footy-wise before the start of next season to actually allow us to take those steps forwards on the field next year. So the next couple of months is going to be really interesting for that, because we've got to make a few changes to improve for 2025, but we've also got to be looking at 2026, and because those players are off contract in just over a month's time. Literally, it's just over a month's time until the players for 2026 are on the open market, and we need to get that period right. I think if you have a look at our off-season last year, you have a look at the players that were off contract, we did really well. We've done really well with the players that we signed in that last signing period for heading into 2025. We're at the point now where we're supplementing our squad for 2025 with players who still haven't signed with clubs or players who are being released from clubs. But it's really important we get that next signing cycle for 2026 spot on as well. That the big names that come onto the markets, the really quality players that come onto the market in November, that we're really improving our roster again leading into 2026.
It's a funny game, but Steve, isn't it? Because if we went from 6 wins to 12 wins next year, and you add in your 3 buys, then what are we, 30 points? Everybody would say that's an incredible year, but that's not even winning 50% of your games. Like you only have to be mediocre. Or slightly better than mediocre to have a successful season.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's my argument, right? Like Gary just alluded to it. That was my argument at the beginning of this year. Whilst I, just fell into the trap of becoming all warm and fuzzy for a few moments. I just turned my mic off and shook that off, and now let's get back to reality.
Yeah, Grandpa Steve's back.
We're an NRL. We're an NRL club, right? There is an expectation that at NRL level that you do what you need to do to win. Right? It's not about the school cross country where the kid who finishes 150th in 2 hours 30 minutes, gets the same ribbon as the bloke coming first. Right? There's an expectation that you win, and next year, I 100% agree. We've got to be looking at 26. We've got to keep building for 26 and beyond. There's that continual cycle of growth. But this club owes its fans and it owes itself and it owes the NRL to get a little bit of self-respect to put in a performance next year that other clubs, other people look at West Tigers with a little bit of respect rather than as the laughing stock of the NRL, which is what we still are. Even if there are signs of improvement, even if we're on the right track, we are still laughed at. We came last and we came last by a long way. This year. So we need to change that. And those 30 players, whoever they are, and there needs to be more churn and more, we need to purchase a few more players to start next season. But those 30 players are pretty much filling the salary cap, and they need to have an expectation to make the 8 next year. Otherwise, it's a failure.
I think you got the Luke Brooks congratulations press release wrong. I haven't had my say on that, but I certainly wouldn't have been doing that. But it appears that the listeners to the West Tigers podcast and the West Tigers fans who filled in the survey still agree. 93% agree that CEO Shane Richardson is doing a good job at our club. There was 57% strongly agree, 36% agree, only 6% neutral, and nobody disagreed or strongly disagreed to that. So, Gary, he's won the fans over. Their confidence is in Shane Richardson. He's got a lot of pressure and he's got a lot of expectation on him.
There's a huge amount of expectation on him, and what Steve just said, that expectation having to be high, that just adds more pressure onto him, because this is a difficult turnaround, and he doesn't have a lot of time to achieve it. I know he's got a good 3-4 year contract, but this fan base isn't going to cop another terrible season next year. It's not going to. It needs to see genuine signs of improvement next year, or those stats may start to shift next year. But I'm fully confident. If you have a look at his record at previous clubs, if you have a look at his record and the things he's been able to achieve at our club since he got here, I'm very confident that he is the man to lead us out of where we've been for the last decade. And I'm sure we're going to start to see the real positive signs of that over the next 2 months. I'm actually really expecting this is where his money needs to be made in turning over the roster for next year and for 2026.
Yeah, I think that's the point, Gary. You said it a couple of minutes ago. Like he earns his dollars with every single thing he does and every decision he makes, obviously. But this next little period of time leading into November 1st, where he's going to start locking up players for seasons ahead, and these talented players, because we've finally got them. We've finally got guys that can take us into the future, and we need to keep the vast majority of them and lock them away for a number of years. If we end up with a scenario that we had, what is it now? I don't know. What is it? 10 years ago? How long ago now when we lost to?
It wasn't that long ago. It was like 2017.
Okay. Well, that's long enough. But if we go back to that, where we lose 3 marquee players or potentially marquee players and lose them to other clubs, then I don't know. I don't know where this club will be at that point. I don't think anyone will be able to stomach that. Like you always have your rusted on that are going to stay. You always have your 7,000 members because of that, but we won't get above that if that happens. This is critically important to our future, more important than any other moment in time, in my opinion.
Now, I just want to ask you, Steve, like you've kind of brushed over it a little bit and answered a little bit about what I want to say, but what do you think that priority is? What does he have to get done in between now and January to really set us up?
The players that are going to lead us into the future, right? So you lock your Galvins, your Sam Fainus, I'd say your Latu Fainu. These guys, Dream Bulu, I think he's locked up for Bulu, isn't he? But these guys, Lau Lily, the other Fainus as well, I would say, or the other Fainus, the only Fainu. Those guys have got to stay with our club. They've got to be sold the vision. Something you talk about a lot, Gary, like the club needing to sell the vision to these guys for them to want to stay, and then have the ability to lock them down medium to long term, so that we can see a future that's bright. That is so important. Now, that to me is number one. Number two, right next to that, is still attracting a couple more experienced marquee level players.
In the forwards?
Yeah, in the forward packet. Front row secondly, front row mainly, and then back row lock would be second. Another outside back would be good as well. Front row, absolutely.
I just want to add one thing on Richo. We've seen Richo come out very strongly in the media and on the Behind the Raw podcast, talking about his vision for the club, talking about what type of team and what type of club we have to become. I know he goes on about Crocodile Rock and whatever other sayings he comes out with, but the meaning behind what he is saying is extremely important. And when I think about that story that came out after the last game, how at the end of the game there were some of the Tigers players sitting on the bench, the injured players or the bench players, whoever they were, and having a laugh. And he came out and said to them, stop mucking around, look like you care, go out and, thank the fans for coming out. That's really got to be driven throughout the entire organisation. Like, Richo can't be the only one, and he's the top. He's as high as they come, right? He's the CEO. He can't be the only one out there in his suit telling everyone how they should behave and what the club should mean to them. It should all be filtered right down through all of the staff into the coaching roster and then through the players as well. So a lot of ownership needs to be taken on board from everyone within the organisation itself. I'd really love to see a lot of that filter out, through the media and through what we see on the field next year too. I just want to see everyone involved with the club be a little bit more proud of who we are, not where we've been the last few years, but what the West Tigers is, what it means to us fans that have invested time and money and blood, sweat and tears into this place for all of our lives, really. I don't think there's going to be many of us supporters or fans that have jumped ship from other clubs come to the West Tigers. But these guys that have got the honour to put on the jersey and wear our colours and play on behalf of us need to come out and really, play with the sort of passion that Richo is showing when he speaks to the public and to the press. But that's the type of club we need to be going forward, starting now, before 2025 even starts. Just has to be drilled out now through the club.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing you say, Nick, because that's got a lot more difficulty in the last 20 years as the game's become more professional. The players move around clubs a lot more. But if you have a look at those really successful clubs, you have a look at Melbourne Storm, you have a look at the Penrith Panthers, they've created an identity for their club around that professionalism and around that ownership of that team. That's the reason why they're in the position they are. The buy-in that Penrith created with their young guys coming through, that this is your local team. You're going out and you're doing this for your community. And you have a look at the impact that had on guys like Jerome Luai. I know a lot of them are starting to move on now, but they're starting to move on at like 3 premierships down the track. And you listen to the way, even now that Jerome Luai speaks about the Penrith Panthers and what that club means to him. And I know he's going to come to our club this year, but Penrith's always going to be a big part of what he did because of that community they've built around that club. That is what we have to do with our club. That's especially with those young guys coming through. That's how you sell it to the Lockie Galvins, the Calendar Silvers that we've got coming through, because they're local members of that Campbelltown, that Macarthur community. This is their opportunity to do something for that community that they grew up with. And we've spoken about, and Steve and I especially have spoken about it for years, about getting buy-in from players. And that's really hard to do when you don't kind of have that little bit of identity. But I think we've got a little bit of a chance to create that with those young guys we've got coming through, that this is their community team. And I think that's really crucial to get right over the next 12 to 18 months, because we want those players fighting for this club and it not just being a club you go and play for because that's your job. People don't go and play for Melbourne because the Melbourne Storms, because that's their job. They go and play for Melbourne to play under Craig Bellamy and to play in that culture. And we need to develop that.
Yeah, 100%, Gary. If you want others to respect you, first you've got to respect yourself. And I'm sure, without a doubt, there would be people within the West Tigers at all levels that still think the club's a bit of a joke and a bit of a piss take, really. And those people, no matter where they are in the organisation, have to be weeded out. You need people like an Appy Coruscant, that even though he's come from a club coming first to a club coming last, he bleeds for that club and gives 100% every single game, and that's what we want. Every single person involved with the organisation, and sadly, to your point, Nick, Shane Richardson is not number one, right? Unfortunately, he's CEO, but he's not, because there's governance that sit above him. And those governors, that governance section of our club, have to act in a way where they can look at each other and look at themselves with respect and dignity. And that's where it starts, so that everyone can feel the same level of respect and dignity about West Tigers. So it's up to every single person in the club.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a moment. We've got to circle back around to that. Sorry, Gary.
And the one thing I wanted to say is I mentioned about Jerome Luai always having that Penrith part of him. That's not going to go away, and it's not going to go away when he comes to the West Tigers. But what this is his opportunity to create that for himself. It's his opportunity to build that at a club and show that it's not just those people around him that helped him create that. And I know I'm talking about the football side of it, and we've got to do it on the admin side as well, and it's got to come from the top. But players follow players. They follow coaches. They may follow the CEO. We need some players to drive that, and I still think he's 100% the perfect kind of person to be driving that for our players.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but Jerome was a Tigers fan growing up as a kid.
Correct.
And okay, so he's come through the Penrith system because he lives out that way, and that was his local junior club. So that's why he's played through the Penrith system. So like Appy as well, when Jerome comes across, he's had his success, and I'm hoping he gets a little bit more this year. I really do. I'd love to see Jerome lift that trophy one more time for the Panthers.
I'm happy for them to get knocked out this weekend so we don't have to risk him anymore.
Well, there could be that too, but I'd like to see a happy Jerome walk into Concord. But I know he's come out and say how hard it's going to be leaving the Panthers, but that little link to his childhood, watching Benji, his childhood hero, and being a Tigers fan, I really think that he will come across into pre-season once he's recovered from the finals and his international footy, and come in with a completely fresh look at it. And probably, I'm just hoping he'll want to come and bring his childhood team, West Tigers, back to success, because he has said that he wants to be the one that gets his club off the bottom. So there's a lot of positives coming into next season.
He can deliver a very good spray, so some of his teammates are going to have to be prepared for that.
Lucky Noffa's not there anymore.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. So fish rots from the head, as they say. If I had never heard of the West Tigers, if somebody had said to me, there's this sports team that's lost, that's won, it's a terrible way of putting it, won 3 wooden spoons in a row, and I started investigating it, I'm going to start investigating it from the top down, not from the bottom up. You're not going to say, well, who's playing on the wing? You're going to ask who owns the club and how do they run the club. So looking at these statistics that have come in from our survey, do you believe the Holman Barnes Group will adopt all review recommendations? Only 23% said yes. There is an area of opportunity here for the Holman Barnes Group to start, because they are our majority owner, to start putting some confidence in the West Tigers fan base, in the way that they operate and function and the way that this club is run. 34% said no, 42% said they were unsure if those recommendations were going to be implemented. Now, we had the update from Shane Richardson saying that they are, it's in the hands of lawyers, etc., but we still are in a little bit of limbo because it hasn't happened. Those independent board members are yet to be officially appointed to the West Tigers board. Holman Barnes Group should sell their stake in West Tigers. 40% agree. Now, to me, Nick, that says to me that there's a large percentage of the West Tigers fans who don't have an awful lot of, I think you could read it, I know I'm being harsh, that don't have an awful lot of confidence in the Holman Barnes Group at this point. And I think this is an area of opportunity for them to show their ability, to show their professionalism.
Yeah, well, any organisation that's been struggling, whether it's a football team or a large business, you look at the results. And if the results aren't working or aren't showing themselves to be successful, then you have to look at why it's failing. And like you say, it starts at the top of the organisational structure and governance. So, yeah, that's why you've got a lot of mixed responses there and some pretty heavy sways to, not very favourable support for Holman Barnes Group. But like you said, Richo said that they're looking into trying to finalise those recommendations. So, can only hope that gets across the board because, they're in the position at the moment to take us into the future, and we need a very positive outcome.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to the appointment of these board members. At this point in time, I'm fairly confident that we're going to see that come through in the next couple of months, and that we'll have those independent board members on there. That takes away, in my opinion, any need for the Holman Barnes Group to kind of sell the club. For me, that's them creating distance between themselves and the running of the club. I'm quite happy they can go off and run the Holman Barnes Group, West Ashfield, and the other clubs, and put professionals in place to run the business that they own, that is the West Tigers. Now, once those independent board members are in place, and once the constitutional changes are made that go along with appointing those board members, then this club is finally set up to be successful, regardless of who the owner is, because it is the board and a professional board that is appointed by a skills matrix that will be running our club, and will be setting the direction of our club at least. And I'm at this point in time, I believe that those recommendations are going to go through, that the constitution is going to be changed, and those board members will be appointed. And I think it's once we get over this last kind of hump of the changes from the review that took place last year by Gary Barnier and Tony Crawford, once we're over this last hump, then the influence of what Holman Barnes Group has over the club and their involvement in the day-to-day running of the club is really negated. And I think that's the celebration point. That's the point where we've got a club that is a modern professional football club that's set up to succeed in a professional sporting environment. So I'm confident that will happen over the next couple of months, and once it does, I think it's clear sailing in that regard moving forward after that.
I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, but if there is a lurch or a blink, if they blink or they have a 180 or a rethink about it, it's going to set us back years. It's the most important point, I think, in West Tigers
crucial,
history.
Joel.
Absolutely.
It just has to happen.
Yep. Okay, next one. West Tigers should do more to honour the Balmain/West Magpies heritage. This was a real split, Steve. This was basically down the lines of 1 in 3, 33, 33, 33. It ended up 29, 36, 31, but pretty close to being split into thirds. 29% strongly agreed or agreed. 31% were neutral. 36% were saying they disagreed or strongly disagreed that we should do more to honour the Balmain and West Magpies heritage. It's always been a very difficult road for the club to walk, with honouring the past but staying contemporary and present and selling the West Tigers vision and message.
Yeah, so this is so easy to say and so difficult to achieve. But we absolutely need to recognise and celebrate the rich history that is West Tigers. And the history of West Tigers is Balmain Tigers and Western Suburbs Magpies from 1908. And that rich history must be celebrated. Now, I'm sure we'll get to this later with questions that are different to this, but that doesn't mean we live or walk in the shoes of Balmain and the Magpies today, because now we are West Tigers. And, I'm, just to give an example, and I know it's a question later, but I'm of the opinion that we should be branded West Tigers everywhere. That's my belief. It's got nothing to do with my past loyalty to Balmain. It's got to do with the future, that we're West Tigers. And I want to go to a footy game, and I want to watch the West Tigers play. And that's what we should be celebrating. So, but in saying that, absolutely, we should recognise, celebrate, learn about, read about the history of two great clubs that form the West Tigers.
For me, it's
sorry, mate. Can I just finish off on that? Because I know that I think the alumni has got a lot to do with this, right? It could do a lot here. We focus on West Tigers alumni. I get that. I really do believe there should be recognition given to the past players of both the Western Suburbs Magpies and the Balmain Tigers, and they should be brought into the fold. I know that they have complained, some have complained in the past about not feeling part of the club and being pushed away and not recognised. And there's a lot of fans who quite rightly, I suppose, say, well, shut up, you're never part of West Tigers anyway. But you know what? The alumni of West Tigers includes the past players of those past clubs, because they are tied to West Tigers forever. They are part of West Tigers. I think that would be a really strong way to build that richness in heritage.
For me, this is a balancing act, and I think it's still going to take a little bit more time to get right. For the first 24 years of our existence, anytime the media especially wanted to get a comment about the West Tigers, they went to mainly former Balmain players. So that was where they went to get the comments about it. And you'd hear that the comment would be Tigers legend, and the story would be all about their comment about it. when was the last time, or when have you ever heard the media say West Tigers legend and then get their opinion on a topic? That's where the balancing act is at the moment, and that's why I think, at least to start with, it's really important that alumni group has been set up as the West Tigers, because this club has done such a poor job of recognising players that actually played for the West Tigers. It's been dreadful, and at times you have a look, like our best players, we've pushed them out of the club, brought them back, pushed them out of the club. There's been huge issues over how we've treated West Tigers players, and I think it's really important that we get that recognition for players that played for the West Tigers, right? And then once we have that, then probably have some arm of it that includes the Balmain and Magpies players as well. But I think it's really important to get this recognition right for the West Tigers players, because we've done that so poorly ever since. Like, I can even remember going back when we used to have the Balmain players at West Tigers games from 1969 go around and do a lap of the field. That happened under West Tigers. When have we done a celebration for 2005 where we've had them all together out on the field and that sort of stuff? I think we've done a better job as a club of recognising Balmain and Western Suburbs heritage than we have of West Tigers. So I think it's really important that we get that right now. And then the Block of Roaches and the Benny Eliases and the Western Suburbs players as well, you can bring them into the fold then. But I think we've got to get that West Tigers recognition for those players that played for us right first.
Benny and Blocker have always been the renter quotes. I think Aaron Woods is angling himself into being the new West Tigers dialogue quote. You can kind of see he's trying to reattach himself to the club in some ways. One point I'd like to make, and it's a point that, I started the podcast talking about the family aspect of the club. And I think where we've failed is we're still yet to have one harmonious family. It doesn't feel like a family. I think, all three of you guys are married. I'm married. I know that from personal experience that when you get married, you not only get a person, but you adopt a family. You get into that family. You become part of that family. And we still haven't got that as a club. It's still an us and them, and it's not a harmonious family where we're looking at it as that we're all under the same umbrella, we're all pushing in the same direction. And the question about the New South Wales Cup side, which I hope we get to in this edition of the pod, is a sign, because it subliminally sends a message to our brains that we're not all one, that we are still disconnected, that we're not quite all pushing in the same direction, Gary.
For someone who just didn't name a Western Suburbs player a moment ago himself, I do think our fan base over the last 2 years, and some of it was the drama that happened at the end of last year, I think our fan base is probably more united and more one than it's ever been. You don't see the old arguments about Balmain versus Western Suburbs anymore. Most people that I communicate with online or at games are West Tigers first. I think that's changed massively over the last 10 years. And it's probably we've had a few dinosaurs, and you have a look what's happened over the last couple of weeks with the squabbles between the Balmain and Holman Barnes Group boards. We've got some people who have a little bit of influence in the club who are probably still carrying grudges around like that. But I do think our fan base is probably the most united that's ever been. We've been through like 13 years of hell together, so that kind of does bring people together.
I'm entirely over it, to be honest. I think it's really exhausting. The other thing too is that as we probably have all been West Tigers fans longer than we were ever a Foundation Club fan.
It's over half my life.
Exactly. So it's time, people. We need to be of the same family, and we need to get together once and for all. Otherwise, we're not going to have a club to support. This is not sustainable over another 20 years if we don't somehow get past this. We've got to start making some tough decisions, I think. Have you considered not being a West Tigers fan in recent years? I'm going to ask you guys, what would you have put for this answer? Be honest, consistently. You've consistently considered not being a West Tigers fan. Sometimes it crosses your mind, or never. Steve?
Look, I'd be lying if I didn't say at the end of last season, I'd lost a lot of faith, and it was showing. It had worn me down. Some of that was on field, some of that was off field. The scary thing about looking under the bonnet is you actually get to see what's there, and
And there was no engine.
and there was no, or the engine needed to be changed.
There just wasn't one.
Flintstone's car, Fred Flintstone running on the ground.
Yeah, so that I was pretty worn down, and I didn't want to watch footy. I didn't want to talk about it. I'd had enough, and that's because I'm such a rusted on. Like, if you don't care about something and you lose it, then you just move on, right? But when you really care about something and it's not operating effectively or it's not going the way you'd like it, it really hurts. And so the end of last year, I didn't want to know about it. Would I ever walk away? No, I couldn't. I would never walk away. That tie, that tether would always be there. It came back with huge aplomb beginning of the year with the changes, and I'm disappointed with this year, of course, but not feeling like it last year. But that's a very long answer to your question. Quick answer is no, but it did wear me out.
Steve's in the never camp. I think Eddie's in the consistently camp. Gary?
Yeah, Eddie would fold the club tomorrow. For me, it's never. I was exhausted at the end of last year as well, and I was sick of the direction the club was going. But I think that's why we decided to do the petition and push for a review of the club, is because we're all at that point where we'd had enough, and that probably sums it up for me. Is that when it got to that point where I'd lost all hope, then it was time to do whatever I could do to make change, and I think that's what we attempted to do last year. And for me, there's never going to be a day where the West Tigers are playing and I don't turn the TV on. There's never going to be a day that I'm not engaged in what our club's doing, because the team's a part of me. It's ingrained in my soul. So that's never an option. Giving up for me isn't an option. It just got to the point where I had to fight for change at our club, and never for me. Long answer as well, Steve.
Mm-hmm. Nick, sometimes you think about it.
Yes, Nick every day he tells me.
No. Look, I'm as rusted on as anyone. I love the club. I love the footy team. But the majority of us, I've at times been extremely tired of what we've had to put up with and what we've had to watch. It got to a point where, and probably even as recent as this season, I'd watch the Tigers game because I can't not watch. It's like a car crash. If I go to a game, I don't leave until the game's over. I stay there until the crowd starts walking out the gates, and then I leave for home. And most of those times it's after a loss. And then I'd get through the Tigers game, and then I wouldn't watch any other game because I'd just be so mentally exhausted from rugby league because of the Tigers. But then you get to final season like now, and it's like instant relief. And I know Eddie's spoken about this too. He's relieved and happy that the Tigers are gone for 6 months, and I am as well, to be honest, to be brutally honest, because the last couple of weeks I've got to sit back and watch other teams play quality football, and some of the games haven't been as good as others, but I don't really care because the contests have been quite good. The quality of play is really good, and my team's not impacted or not affected, and doesn't impact the result, and doesn't impact my life either, and my health. So I wouldn't walk away, but like everyone here, it has been very exhausting and draining, and that's why we all want change ASAP.
There's the part that you said, Nick, about not being engaged in other games. That's how it manifested itself for me as well. When the Tigers are going poorly, I find it harder to watch other teams play. I know there was times in the pod this year where we'd do a preview, and especially during those runs where we lost for a couple of months straight, I find myself watching Tigers games, and then we'd jump on the pod and we're doing a preview about the upcoming game, and we're talking about the team we're playing, and I sit there and I think to myself, I haven't watched these guys play in 2 months. And that's how it affects me, is I watch less of other teams.
Exactly the same for me, Gary. And some of those previews that I've been on too, I'd have to go and look at the ladder to see where the teams were sitting, because I knew we were at the bottom, but I had no idea where anyone else was sitting.
See, I'm the opposite. I just love watching footy, and I enjoy the other 7 games of the weekend so much because I don't have the emotional tie. I'm not walking around the lounge room or out at the game if I'm there. You know, my wife just can't believe it when there's a Tigers game on telly. The way I walk around and stand behind the lounge, swear at the TV, walk out to the veranda, come back. You know, like it's just crazy stuff. But I just love watching good footy, and I admire those other teams, unless it's the Roosters, can't stand them. But the rest of them, I just love watching. And I suppose that probably shows why when we do previews, I've been carrying you blokes all year.
When you've been here, Steve.
yeah, on those 2 pods.
For me, that emotional tie into football is really important. Like, a big part of sport for me is that emotional attachment I have to my teams. And even I've enjoyed these semi-finals, but it's nothing compared to a semi-final series that we're involved in. So, while I've enjoyed watching them, and I haven't been turning them off because I'm not annoyed at the Tigers. I've been watching them. I miss that real emotional engagement with a game of football. And the big thing I really missed from the last 10 years is that emotional engagement in a game that meant something.
Yeah.
That's why, and I know Steve was kind of having a crack at it, but that's why so many people got kind of wrapped up in the spoon bowl. I knew it was a nothing game, but it's been so long since we've played a game that had any meaning behind it at all. Like, we're out of competitions by May, so it's been so long, and even those years where we finished ninth feel so long ago now. That's why so many people got behind a meaningless game against Parramatta, is because we've had nothing to be emotionally involved with in a game that meant something for so long.
That's why the first 4 rounds of the season are so much fun, because you think, you know, if Cronulla can beat Penrith, that means we move to 5th, you know.
Yeah, imagine having that travelling through August.
All season, yeah.
And there's nothing better than beating Parramatta, so that put a bit of extra emphasis in it. But we're discussing, have you considered not being a West Tigers fan in recent years? The results showed 10% of our people that filled in the survey have been consistently considering walking away from the club. 21% said sometimes. I've got to say, as much as I never would, I think about it at times. It's like I ask myself the question, why am I doing this? 69% said they would never walk away from the club, which is heartening. I just want to clarify, I'm going to be really discourteous here, but the former admin, you know, we're talking about looking under the bonnet. There was an engine there. Can't say there wasn't, because there was. And I've driven many, many thousands of cars over the years.
It had no oil in it, mate.
The worst engine I've ever come across in a car is the Starfire 4-cylinder engine that Holden supplied to Toyota back in the 80s. And I think that's the perfect, that former admin, that's their level, the Starfire 4-cylinder. If you ever came across it, you'd remember just how bad it was. So
Not sure how old our audience base is there, but thanks, Joel. Good stats.
I like going back in history. It was
You can't go forward in history, Joel. So.
Limp and lifeless was that engine. So I think it's perfect for some of the people that were running this club. How satisfied are you with the 2025 West Tigers playing squad? This is looking into the future. Probably not as optimistic as I thought, perhaps. Of the people that said they were very satisfied or satisfied, made up 43%. So I thought it might be a little bit higher than that. 29% not sure how the 2025 roster is going to go, and 26% said unsatisfied or very unsatisfied with the way that the squad is looking. Nick, at this stage, look, probably fair enough. There are some green shoots. There's some real things to be excited about, but there are some concerns. We don't know exactly what this roster is going to look like at this stage. I mean, hopefully there's some people that have been or have been put through the shredder. Hopefully.
Yeah, I think there's still some room for some movement during the preseason. So I'm looking forward to seeing what can fall out of the tree and what we can shake out of our closet as well. Yeah, I'm in that satisfied bucket. I'm not overly excited yet, but saying that, I am excited with some of the positional changes. I think I've been, extremely excited with Luai coming for 12 months now, and that's been the hard part, knowing he signed and then watching him play for Penrith for a year. But
especially since he only signed 9 months ago.
Exactly. Yeah, it's such a long time. But there's certain players coming across like him and Taruva as well. I think he'll be a huge addition. People like Skelton as well. I've never really watched Skelton until he signed, and then I started watching his highlights packages and then a couple of the games he played. And geez, he can hit the line. He's a big, strong boy, and he's only young too. So I'm excited with him coming across. And like we've said, I can't wait for Brian To'o to fall out of the tree at Penrith and come across too during the preseason. That will get everyone back into buying West Tigers memberships. Bring that one on.
That would be huge. Unlikely, but it would be huge. I've made an executive decision. We're only going to do 2 more questions, and then we'll roll this into another edition of the pod. We'll knock off all the rest of the other questions from the survey. Steve, this is just the way it's fallen. I haven't manufactured this, but you are the perfect guy to ask this question, and it's something that you've talked about in the past. So these recruits, these 2025 recruits, there's 5 guys already that we know about, as mentioned by Nick. These recruits will reach their potential at our club. Only 8% strongly agreed, 37% agreed, 44% were neutral or said they were not sure. 7% disagreed, 1% strongly disagreed. Most people there saying, they think that the Jerome Luais and the Jarrell Skeltons, etc., will come and they'll play good football.
Well, if you just go on history, if you go with raw statistics and base evidence, you would have to say that the vast majority of them won't reach their potential if you go on what history has shown us. Of course, what that doesn't account for is the change that's occurring within the organisation. So what we've got to hope, and we can't do anything but hope because we don't have any evidence really, but we've just got to hope that there is incredible positive change happening within the organisation so that when these recruits land at our doorstep, you can add to their own ability and resilience and drive. And you can add to that the culture at West Tigers, put that together, and you get a recipe for success. That's what we've got to hope happens. If they come here and are overwhelmed by the hardship of playing at West Tigers, half of them will want out straight away. Some of them will just give up, and maybe one of them will have a red-hot crack for the next couple of seasons before they move on. I don't think that'll happen. I'm confident enough that change is taking place, but I can only be hopeful. That's all I can be. That's going to happen. We do need more though. We need a couple more. And it doesn't. And I was thinking, Nick, when you were saying it, and like Nick, you've probably been the strongest voice in saying, you're looking forward to Jerome Luai, and I am too, right? I really am. He can't do it on his own. Jerome Luai on his own is not going to change this club, in my opinion. He's a strong personality, he's a good footballer, and he's going to come with a lot to add to our organisation. But it needs to be a whole organisation effort to manifest this change. He's just a small part of it. So I'm just hoping that happens.
Completely agree, Stephen. That's part of the beauty, I think, of what Jerome Luai is. I think he will bring everyone along with him for the ride. So when he walks in, and the Penrith players have talked about it, his energy, and he's a pest, right? And he gets on the team bus with his boombox and he's playing all the tunes and dancing and singing. He is the centre of attention and brings them all with him. I think he will become the new nucleus of our club. That's why I can't wait for him to walk in the door. I really think he's going to be a huge shifter for our club our team going forward.
Well, I'm probably going to answer both the last 2 questions in my response here, but I agree with Steve. I think we're partway there to having an improved roster for next season. If I look at our roster right now, especially in the forwards, our forwards aren't as strong as they were this year. And that's something we've got to get sorted out before the start of next season. That Hunt signing, if he's the only prop that's coming across, then I have concerns about that Hunt signing. If there's another aggressive middle that can play good minutes, is nice and mobile, and can lead our pack, then I'm really happy with that Hunt signing, and I think he will add a lot to our forward pack that we don't have. But he's not the forward leader we need. We need someone else to come across in that role. Now, in regards to are these players we're bringing into the club going to improve, for me that comes down to two things. Number one, it comes down to the coach, and I think there's still question marks around that area with Benji. I think the next 6 months are going to be really telling. That we need to see players developing and players improving under him. And I think the young guys have actually done really well under Benji Marshall's coaching, but there's been issues with the senior players we have in the club. Bateman, and we can put the blame on those senior players, but if you look through our senior players as a whole, I think you'd say the vast majority of our senior players played their worst season in the NRL last season. Probably even Api Coruscant, who I don't think had a bad season, but it probably wasn't his best season of football. So if you look through those senior guys across our squad, I think they all went backwards. So we need the senior players that we do have coming in, we need them to be able to go to another level once they get to the club. So we need a guy like Hunt to come into our squad, and he's a guy that's playing 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes a game. Sometimes he comes back on and gets a second stint, but some games he's only playing 15 to 20 minutes in total. We need to develop that guy into a better footballer next year. A guy who is at 29, and it's harder to develop them at that point. I think that's where the question marks around Benji Marshall's coaching are sitting at the moment in regards to developing players. I think you look at Lockie Galvin and the other young guys, I think they all showed signs of development over the season. So I think that's really crucial. The second part of that is you need extremely strong leaders in your club. I don't think we've had that in the past. I think Api Coruscant has been, I'm not going to say he's a poor leader, but he's been a very strong leader, but he's not a vocal leader. He's a guy who will go out and kind of play his guts out and lead by example. I don't think a lot of our players have been really following that example. I think bringing what you get when you bring Jerome Luai into the side is you have Appy, who is that lead by example type guy, and then you have a guy like Jerome Luai who comes in and he's the guy who's going to walk up to you and shirt front you if you're not putting in the extra yards. He's the guy that if you're bludging out on the field or you're bludging on the training paddock, he's not going to be scared to give you a rev up. And I think we've probably lacked that. I don't think Appy is that style of leader. So bringing Jerome in, I think you get that kind of leadership from him. And I think a big part of the Bulldogs' turnaround this year was Stephen Crichton coming into their club. Now, everyone, myself included, and just about everyone in here, was laughing at the Bulldogs' recruitment over the off-season. All they've done is gone out and signed utilities. I think the leadership of Stephen Crichton has been crucial in bringing that team together to play the football that they've played this year. And that's the impact I hope that a guy like Jerome Luai can have on our squad. Not just what he does on the field, but his ability to lift the standards around our training, to lift the standards around our expectations, and to actually make players around him better. And not just better through him being a better player and putting them in better positions, make them better by increasing the standards at the club. And that's what I hope we're getting with him. And that's what you hear out of Penrith, and that's what you hear people speak about him. So I think we get a big tick on that part at this point. The question mark for me is still around whether Benji Marshall can get those senior players on side and get them progressing the way I think he's got the junior players progressing.
Speaking of senior players, the last one for episode 361, John Bateman should be paid out / released by West Tigers ASAP.
Shot out of a cannon.
Yeah, 68% saying yes. So there's plenty of support for West Tigers to move on from John Bateman. Only 19% said maybe, 12% said no. So John Bateman, Steve, he's, by the look of it, lost the fan base, or certainly the vast majority of the fan base.
Well, and deservedly so, Joel. Like I banged on about it last pod fairly extensively. He's lost me, that's for sure. The way he carried on at the end of the season when he got himself back to England was disgraceful. Really, I don't know how he can expect to show his face at training, and get any sort of respect from anyone. Like I suppose anyone can turn it around. Like I'm not one of these guys, who's just going to hate someone forever. If he comes back with a different attitude and wants to give it a red hot crack, and I'm sure he'll be given that chance. But I tell you what, it'd be very hard, and I don't necessarily think he's what we need anymore anyway.
All right, we'll leave it there, guys. We've got 13 more questions to go through. We'll do that on the next edition of the pod, episode number 362. We'll try and record that over the weekend and get that out as soon as possible. Some really interesting topics that are covered in that second part of the survey, including things like the New South Wales Cup team, a few questions around the NRL, and a few questions around, do the West Tigers admin know what the West Tigers fans want? Do they care? That kind of thing as well. So I hope you can join us for episode number 362. And you never know, there may be some West Tigers news to talk about, maybe, by then, because it's been unbelievably quiet lately. But I think, Gary, the grand final breakfast or luncheon is coming up, and you never know, sometimes you get a little bit of news out of that.
No grand final luncheon this year.
Okay.
Club is no longer holding those. Yeah, but they're having a gala awards night on October 11th, and I'm sure there'll be a little bit of news come out of that. So, so we'll probably have to record a pod around that time as well. Hopefully there'll be plenty of goss from that.
Yeah, that'll be good. All right, thank you, guys.
Thanks, boys.
Thanks, Ella.
Thanks, guys.